Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In this Python beginner tutorial series, let's start speaking about what is Python Boolean. Okay, so for beginners who doesn't know what Boolean is, Boolean generally represents two values. It will either return true or false. Okay, so this is what in programming we generally call Boolean. Okay, so let's start looking into few basic examples about how Boolean is utilized in our day-to-day programming. Okay, so to have a very basic understanding about how Boolean works, let's start looking into few very basic examples. And I will start with very simpler complexity level to understand, to give you a better understanding about how and what Boolean is and how we can utilize in our day-to-day programming. Okay, so first example is I have a very basic print statement. Let me type it here. So I have print 1 greater than 2. Okay, so if the condition satisfies, it will return true or else it will return false. So as simple as that. So here 1 is obviously not greater than 2. So it returned me a false as a boolean value. For example, if I change it to a larger value like 5 greater than 2, then it will return me true. Okay, so this is very basic example about what boolean is. Okay, and second example is let do something based on whether condition is true or false. Okay, so if you want to do some activity based on whether a condition is satisfied or not, in that situation also you can use a boolean value. For example, here I have two values a and b. What I need to do is, if a is greater than b, and then I want to print this statement. Otherwise, I need to print the second statement, which is in my else block. So obviously here in this example, a is not greater than b, so it will go into my else loop and print b is not greater than a. So this boolean value is not satisfied, which is a greater than b is not satisfied. So it went into my else statement. Now I'm going to change the value to 40, where a is actually greater than b in this situation. So it will go into my if condition, where it will tell me b is greater than a. So again, as you can use boolean based where places where if you need to perform some operation based on certain condition. Okay, so this is another example about how boolean works. And moving on, there's something called boolean function. Okay, so bool function allows you to generally evaluate any value and give you true or false in return. Okay, so let's look into this basic example where we have print boolean equal to python. So obviously I have a string value inside bool function here, so it will return either true or false. So it's just a basic boolean value. So it returned me true. Similarly, if I want to pass an any integer value also, it will return me true. So this is a very basic example about how to use boolean statement. Okay, so if I passed any blank value, it will return me false. Okay, so this is how you can use bool function. And moving on, function can return a boolean value. Okay, so in Python, we have I will cover a separate topic about what is functions and how to use functions. But here in this example, I am keeping it very simple. Uh, so what I'm doing is I have just created a function called function1, and I'm just returning a boolean value called true. Okay, so now if I run this, it will return me a boolean value. Okay, so here now in certain conditions in your day-to-day programming, you might be put in a situation where if you have executed certain set of code or certain set of statement, you want to return a true or false value. Basically, you want to return a boolean value. In that situation also, you can use this. It will be very helpful in your day-to-day programming. So again, if I pass it on false, it will pass false here. So this is another example of where you can use boolean. And moving on, inbuilt functions can return a boolean value. Okay, so there are a lot of inbuilt functions in Python which will generally return a boolean value. Here let's see an example of is instance method. Okay, so there's a inbuilt method called is instance method here. So what this is instance statement will do is, this will return a boolean value based on the condition that is provided here. So basically x is a value, x is my variable name here, and I am trying to evaluate if it is an int or not, integer or not. So obviously 100 is an integer, so I am expecting it to return a boolean value called true. So let me run this. Yeah, now it returned true for me. Okay, similarly if I will pass on a different, maybe I will pass on a different value, like I will pass on a string here. So let me pass on string called say Python. Now obviously it should return false. Yeah, because I have just passed a string value, but I am validating if it is an integer or not. So this is another example, and let me try with another example of list. So I am passing a list value, so I am validating if it is an integer or not. Again, obviously it is not, so it returns me a false. Now I go and change my argument to list. Now it will return me true. Okay, so this is how you can use inbuilt functions to return boolean value based on your requirement. Okay, so moving on, next you have something called Python Boolean as keywords. So this is an interesting one. Whereas in most of the programming language, there will be few inbuilt keywords, and you cannot use it in your programming to define something. Okay, so you cannot use it as a variable name, or you cannot use it elsewhere. Whereas this true and false are actually not built-ins. So these are actually keywords. Unlike many other Python keywords, true or false are basically Python expression. So it's possible to assign a Boolean value to variables. So let me show this in IDE to make you understand better. So I have assigned a value called true, which is a Boolean value, to a variable name called ABC. Let me try this here. So ABC equal to true. From this, okay, it did not return anything. So print ABC. So obviously it will return true for me. Okay, so it returned true. If it is false, it will return false. One thing to note here is, so if I try to give any string value, okay, so say I am not enclosing any double quotes. Say if I'm trying to provide Python, so it will not work because it is not a result keyword, and I'm not giving it in a double quotes to indicate if it is a string. Okay, so whereas if you note with this Boolean value, this again looks like a string, but it is not. These are actually Boolean values. True and false are Boolean values. So in case if I try to assign it to a number, it will not definitely work. So obviously it throws me syntax error even when I type. So this is not the right way to use it. I can use any variable to assign a Boolean value. Okay, so this is another area where you can apply Boolean. Right, moving on, let's see something called Python Boolean as numbers. Okay, so in general, let me read out the definition for you. Booleans are considered a numeric type in Python. Basically, it means they are numbers. Okay, in other words, you can apply arithmetic operations to Booleans, and you can also compare them to numbers. So basically, you can consider those as numbers. So I have something called true equal to 1. So basically, true generally denotes 1, which is a correct value. False generally returns 0, which is the incorrect value. So here I'm gonna pass true equal to 1. Obviously, yeah, it ran successfully. It does not return any error. Now I'm gonna put it in a print statement. So print true equal to 1. It obviously returned true to me because the Boolean value for 1 is true. Now if I put it as 0, it will return me false. Okay, can you note, because the 0 is used to denote false values. So now if I put false here, it will return value as true. Interesting. Okay, so again if I put it as 1, obviously it is not belong to false, it will return false. Okay, so this is another area where you can utilize Python Boolean. And finally, let me show you a very basic program to make you understand how we can use Boolean function in a day-to-day programming. Okay, so here I have a very basic program to denote to find out whether the provided number is even number or odd number. Okay, let's try that program. So so that's I have used a return boolean method here. So I am asking my function check to actually return a boolean value if the num module of 2 is equal to 0, then probably I will go into my if condition and print it as even. If the modulus is not equal to 0, then I will print as odd. So modulo operation generally returns the remainder. So if the remainder is 0, then print even. If the remainder is not 0, then print odd. Okay, so the Boolean implementation is done here perfectly. So this is the single line of code you need to note how to utilize Boolean. So here I'm just going to reiterate what is Boolean. So I'm returning a Boolean value if the provided number modulus of 2 is equal to 0. Basically, if the provided number remainder is 0, then I will print it as even, or else I will print it as odd. Okay, so now let me run this program. Yeah, now it went into my if condition and tried to show me, and it printed me even. Okay, now if I change the number, maybe I put it as 11, it will print me odd. Okay, so uh, this is how we can easily find whether a given number is even or odd using a very simple boolean operation. Okay, so yes friends, that's all what I pretty much want to cover as part of the Python boolean video. In case if you have any queries, please post it into the comment section. I will try to answer it as soon as possible. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you.